everyone. I would like to welcome you to this session where we will be in conversation with Tathagata about his latest book, General Firebrand, and his Red Atlas, published by Seagull Publishing. To tell you a bit about Tathagata, he is a journalist and sustainability expert who divides his time between the plains of Delhi and the mountains of Uttarakhand. He has over 2 decades of experience in writing and reporting, as well as editorial management of diverse teams and media verticals. He has worked in senior editorial capacities at leading Indian and international media outlets. His current obsession is the mainstreaming of climate change, friendly and self sustaining habitats. He is the only child of cult Bengali writer Nabarun Bhattacharya and the only grandchild of noted playwright-director Bijon Bhattacharya and writer-activist Mahasweta Devi. Welcome, Tathagata. Thank you so much for your time with us today. My first question actually is inspired by your session yesterday, where you talk about coming from a family of writers, which goes back to like 2, 3 generations. So was writing always something that you aspired to do? Is that how you thought of yourself as a child? Because of course, the atmosphere at home, of the conversations with all these writers, with these luminaries that have been around you as grandparents, as parents.
Well, yeah, see, if you're born into a family, I am probably the fourth generation actually writer. So, in my family, so looking at a certain strand of the family tree. So, and obviously, you aspire to do things because you see, you were basically, ever since, when we were children, we were surrounded by books. And actually, to be very honest, when we were growing up, there wasn't anything much to do. You could only read books or you could go and play games, outdoor games and some certain indoor games, which were possible, like carom, or you could go to the local, in Calcutta, we had the local youths form these clubs, which are nothing fancy like clubs, which are like just one room.
Yeah.
One concrete room where there will be a carom board, a table tennis board. There will be a community television here where people will watch matches together and stuff like that. And it's a kind of a congregation zone. So, there was nothing more to do. So, or you played outdoors. We played a lot of cricket, a lot of football. A lot of volleyball, hockey, and stuff. And we read books. And during our childhood, the only gift you would get on birthdays or on New Year, whether be it English New Year or our Bengali New Year or whatever, even during the pujas, which are very major festivals for us, you will during the pujas you will also get new clothes, but you will invariably get books, because books were the only thing which people used to gift to each other those days. So you surround, and especially coming from a family of writers, I was blessed to be surrounded by books. Still, my Calcutta house has around, I think, I don't know, 40-50,000 books,
Wow.
at least. At least. And my house here also has books. My house in the mountains has books. So you're surrounded by books, and you're surrounded by, because I come from a family of writers, I was very lucky that I read both Bengali literature as well as world literature, because my father was a voracious reader. So as a child also, as a teenager, as a young adult, I grew up reading Russian literature, Turkish literature, Latin American literature, African literature, Japanese literature, Chinese literature, American literature, French literature, translated into English, obviously. Mm, so that aspiration of being a writer comes very automatically. And like it is very often said, all journalists are in a way failed writers. They say, so once I went into journalism also, there was extensive writing and stuff. But yes, it took me a bit of time to write my first novel and stuff, because there was a sense of complacency in me, in the sense that till my parents were around, if till my grandmother was around, I was very complacent in a way, because my father always told me, and even my grandmother, that you will become a writer one day. So why don't you start now? They always used to say. But I always had a feeling that no, they're around, they're doing the job. I don't need to do this. I think that entire feeling kicked in after I lost all of them. And it was then when I actually started taking this thing seriously. And finally, I penned the book and it came out.
So this actually is what is a part of my next question. I'm sure, like, what motivated your transition from journalism to fiction writing? Because it's, of course, journalists do write books, but more commonly it is more of non-fiction and very rare to see fiction. So was it a deliberate endeavor to merge your expertise in journalism and sustainability with this book?
See, it was not something deliberate. Because I think my book is mm, it's what many people have called it. Many reviews have come out in India where the book has been released. So somebody has called it speculative fiction, somebody has called it dystopian, somebody has called it magic realist. But I consider my book to be a piece of political work. I mean, because I come from a school of political writers, because I think writers should have clear politics. And i i was very lucky to have grown up with, because my father, my grandmother, they were all very serious writers. They were not really potboiler writers, none of them. So, and because I grew up on a diet of quality literature from all around the world, I mean, I have a feeling that having read, I mean, I'm not saying that I have read some, but if one inculcates the habit of reading quality literature, serious fiction, it in a way prevents one from writing something utterly frivolous or time serving. I mean, like, that's one of the boons, I think. And so I consider my work to be a piece of political fiction. It spells out my politics very clearly, but maybe in a symbolic manner. I mean, like, and yes, there is this element of probably sustainability, because I, I, and my father too. I mean, I never had an anthropocentric worldview. Neither did my father. In fact, our Calcutta house, we were blessed to have a garden on all three sides of our ground floor apartment. So it was kind of a mini menagerie. I mean, like a mini zoo. So there will be all these injured birds and cats and dogs and we would try to care for them. Most often we won't succeed, but still we tried. And our house had a lot of dogs, cats, birds, and stuff. And I always have a feeling that our species, the human species, we kind of try to think of ourselves as the primary stakeholder on this planet, like that we have a say in everything and in every matter possible, as if no other species, no other insect, no other bird, no other living organism has a right to exist. And we can do whatever we like. We can go and cut down trees, we can go and clear forests, because we need agricultural land, we need land to settle down, we need to grow our cities. uh, and those species can go to dogs. And I think we are the only species which makes weapons to kill people from the same I mean beings from the same species. I don't think any other species on this planet does that. And so I never had an anthropocentric life of life. And in fact, there is actually a saying by the Jain Tirthankar Mahavir, that uh, one has to understand that you are an element in this system,
Yeah.
but you are not the only one.
Mm.
And everything coexists. Today, a lot of lip service is being paid in the name of all these things, climate change and stuff. All, although, I mean, like, I mean, the developed countries which are responsible for most of the, I mean, they're actually offering lift services, and they're not really serious about it. Otherwise, why would 5,000 people go in their private jets for a climate conference?
Absolutely.
I mean, like that's a contradiction in itself. It's a, I mean, like, so, I mean, yes. So that's why you have these animal characters, for example, talking animal characters in my book, because uh, and but I don't think it was a very conscious attempt. It was probably at the back of my mind somewhere, maybe, but it was not something very conscious. Actually, this book was written in a flow. So, I mean, things came to me as I was writing. It was like a very, uh, and I did not write this book like, a lot of writers go for structures. Nowadays writing is also taught, creative writing and stuff. So this book was not structured. I did not have, I started from the first line and I finished with the last line.
Wow,
I wrote it in a flow.
that's
So
amazing.
I mean, so in a way it came to me.
That's really amazing. Whatever you have shared about your childhood so far, I would really say it's all like the perfect dream childhood that we all read about in books, in fairy tales as kids, and we grow up dreaming about. My next question to you is that, as I just mentioned, that your writing actually blends fiction with activism, and there's a lot of climate change, environmental degradation, as you highlighted. So, how do you perceive the role of literature in galvanizing action and driving change on these pressing issues? And do you think fiction contributes to the broader discourse on climate change, sustainability, and all the topics that you've touched upon?
See, I'm not so sure whether fiction contributes, because uh, in today's world, I'm not even sure how many people read books, and at least read serious books, serious fiction. One is not talking about self-help books here, or something like how to grow your business, how to grow your money, how to have better sex. I mean, like, so this is a, because when you are reading a creative piece of fiction and a serious piece of fiction, your mind is also working, right? You, as a reader, so you're never really passive, because you are also immersed with the thing, that kind of. But how many of our because ultimately it's the hands of the policymakers, and how many of our policymakers read books, I don't know. I mean, at least looking at my country where I come from, and where the policymakers are, I don't know whether they read serious fiction. I won't be very sure about it. I mean, to put it mildly. So, but yes, I think, but a writer's job is basically to write. His job is not to think about what impact my writing will have. His job is to write. I think so. And because a writer is also a social and political animal,
Right.
he is also living uh, a reality, and he is also reacting to that reality, and that reaction is coming in form of words, in form of a, I mean, bound book. And so what emotions it generates in people, that's, but historically we have seen fiction, poetry, these things, I mean, galvanize people, galvanize activism, you know give rise to movements and stuff. And in my own family, we have a series of such uh, uh, instances, I mean, like in my own family. So I mean, so it's very natural to expect that the conscious, or those who want to open their mind, those who want to broaden their horizon, will take a leaf or out from a piece of fiction. And I also think, having been a journalist for the better part of my life, I mean, like, very often non-fiction, very matter of fact kind of things actually get very boring, probably. And you kind of get immune to those news reports and features and stuff. I think fiction can be an alternative means, of of kind of nudging the person uh, at the right point, like I say. And if since you have read my book, you know, I mean, like, mm, I've deliberately actually kept the language very zany and very irreverent. The prose is very irreverent. It's not very well rounded, because I
Yeah.
wanted it to be jagged. Yeah, I wanted it to be like a knife. I wanted to hurt the reader, because I don't want the reader to feel very comfortable reading the book. I want a reaction out of him or her. So that's the way I wanted my book to be. And I'm told by some people, at least who have read, that it has turned out to be like that. So I'm quite happy in that sense.
So, we spoke about your characters where you talked about talking animals, and I need to tell you that, the first thing that came to my mind was Mulk Raj Anand's writings, because that's where the first time as a child I read about, an animal talking, parrots talking, and also, what was your inspiration and which character? I personally loved General Firebrand, but I would love to know who one of the characters, what was the research? Was it inspired by real people? Was there any research? Like you said, you just started the book and you finished it. So did they actually come talking to you?
No, see, I mean, honestly, research wise, see, there are certain details like like I've
Yeah,
used historical characters.
yeah,
I've used certain specifications, like certain weapon specifications, certain
right,
a bullet of a particular bore on a magazine. All those are very meticulously researched.
true.
And ever since I was very small, I was very interested in the history of warfare, because
Hmm.
a lot of the thing that a lot of the peaceniks and the so-called liberals don't really understand is that actually this world, ever since its has been actually shaped by warfare. We don't realize that, but everything from the current geopolitics to what had happened, it has been shaped by war. And even the scientific developments, like invention of penicillin to world wide web.
Hmm.
Today we are on world wide web. It's a product of the defense research of the United States. I mean,
Right.
like, that's how it emerged. So I mean, like, I've always been very interested. So in my Calcutta house, I have a shelf. I have an almirah actually of books just dedicated to, I mean, warfare in 2000, even to 1500 BC to Second World War. And I've read, I've used some characters from Second World War, for example.
Hmm.
I've read all of their works, complete
Right.
works, and those are multi-volume works. And as a journalist, I have been also in the defense beat for a while.
Right.
So, and I have covered a few conflicts and stuff in not just in India, but in different parts of the world.
Right.
So that also helps in terms of And yes, I do my research. I mean, I like to be exact when I'm referring to something actual. Then I want it to be exactly, I mean, real and true. And mm, because I believe in exactitude in that sense. I mean, like, and also about these characters, I mean, these characters came very naturally. And I have used some characters from actually my dad's last unfinished novel, which I have written in my because they're not a central part of the novel, but because my father died of a terminal illness and he couldn't write the last part of his last novel. So, the Bengali publishing house which published it actually left 20 to 30 blank pages uh, at the end of the book for the reader to finish the book.
Wow.
So, I mean, so in a way, also wanted to give his characters a sense of closure.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, that was also one of the things. And actually, this book came to me in a very, I'll tell you very frankly, I was in a quite a troubled state of mind at that point of time, because I'd very quickly lost first my father, then my grandmother, and then my mother in very quick succession. And I'm an only child. And we were a very closely knit family. So at that point of time, I mean, I have no problems in considering that I went through a complete mental breakdown. I mean, I was like a wreck. I mean, like, and I felt like everyone who was close to me, I was losing them. And I was also convinced that I was going to lose my like my wife and my son and stuff. And when you're mentally insecure, you do stupid stuff, and I did too, and it worsened the situation. And this book came as sort of a redemption. This book was like, I wrote this book in frenzy. I think I wrote this book in 2 months flat.
Wow.
2 months flat. And it was like, but once I finished this book, I had this sense of relief and a sense of reconciliation. I understood that I had not reconciled with a lot of things which had happened to me in the past, and those were all kind of getting accumulated somewhere inside. So this book came as a release, and after that I felt at peace. After I wrote this book, I felt at peace. But when I was writing this book, I was in a very troubled state of mind, and I was not sure about anything. So that's why in my introduction I have written this book is born out of fear and insecurity, because I was afraid. And I've always been a very confident sort of guy in my life, in every field of whatever I've done, study wise, work wise, you know. I mean, and I used to play sports also. I mean, at a competitive level and stuff. So, but those few months, I had zero confidence. I mean, like, I'm telling you, I was a wreck. And this book came as a kind of an umbrella. It was it was like to take uh, one of the, I mean, to quote one of Bob Dylan's title, I mean, song title. It it was the shelter from the storm, basically.
So, Tathagata, in the beginning, we spoke about your family and the literary heritage, the rich literary heritage that you come from. So, how has that shaped your creative process and influenced your journey as a writer? Like, are there any traits, any habits, anything that you picked up from them or absorbed by just watching them?
No, no, I don't really think so. Actually, I'll be very frank with you. I mean, like, the only thing I think which has helped is that the exposure,
Mm.
and to to basically to the treasure trove of world literature, that you cannot be confined in your own cocoon. That, and it also kind of in a way dispels, the feeling of regional chauvinism, language chauvinism and stuff like that, because a lot of, as you will be aware of, a lot of Bengalis like to think of themselves to be linguistically, literature wise. I
Mm.
mean, they like to look down upon other
Yeah.
languages and stuff. And once you are exposed to world literature and also Indian literature in other Indian languages, you know how stupid it is. I mean, like, so you have to expand your. And another thing is that, I mean, like, this I've heard from a lot of people that, your father was a famous person, your grandmother was a famous person. Now, from the outside it looks like he or she is a very famous person, but if you're a part of the family, actually it doesn't, I mean, you really don't feel like you're living with someone very big, because ultimately he's your father or she's your grandmother or something like that. I mean, like, so, and I mean, we come from the simple middle class Indian family. I mean, like, so we did everything like our next door kid did. I mean, and we grew up together. And fortunately, during our times, these concepts of gated communities didn't exist. And so we grew up with everyone. Uh, we had friends who were sons and daughters of, say, doctors and lawyers and engineers. But we also had friends, and they're friends for life. I mean, till today. And we had friends whose fathers were rickshaw pullers, daily wage earners. We would play together. We'll do everything. And till date, we are friends. And because this concept of gated community did not exist at that point of time, it was to be the neighborhood, and the neighborhood will have all kinds of people. There will be criminals and thugs as well, complete hooligans. and so I mean, like, so in a way, if you look at, I mean, certain parts of my book where I mention about the dark underbelly,
Yeah.
those come from actual practical experiences, because you cannot write on them unless you have been to those places, you're mixed with those people, you have experienced certain things. So a large part of the book has also been coming from experience, and also during our student years we have been exposed to student activism, student politics, and stuff like that. So a lot of our friends were into radical politics and stuff. So and through them we met certain other characters, and probably everything kind of coalesced together into making of this book, basically.
Wow. Uh, Tathagata, this is actually connected to two of the answers that you just shared. That, in the introduction to the book, you've written that this book was born out of fear and insecurity. And just before that, we discussed and you'd mentioned that you actually wanted the reader to be jarred, to be, to have some pricking sensation and not have a smooth or a happy reading. So would it be wrong to actually say that there was also some amount of anger when you wrote about this, be it towards people's approach towards sustainability or towards the way they are treating the planet, or how they are approaching a lot of aspects regarding the environment that you speak about? Would it be wrong to say that, or would it be correct to highlight that?
See, an element of anger is obviously there. I
Yeah.
mean, like, and that's very visible. And but the anger is not just about how the planet is. The anger is also about the political situation.
Yeah. True.
The anger is also about the absurdity of the political situation today. Not just, I mean, here, but even elsewhere in the world. I mean, like, I mean, how do you really, I mean, justify so-called extremely liberal and woke Western media platform justifying the probably the biggest genocide which I have at least witnessed in my lifetime, in till I could make sense of things, basically, and I'm 47. So how do you justify the same Western woke liberal, so-called liberal media, which which says a lot of things for individual liberty and freedom, and for example, I mean, like, I'm and LGBTQ UI rights and stuff. How the same media is justifying arming and backing of proven Nazi people of Nazi ideology, with Nazi insignia, with, I mean, with the same banners, with the same which the Nazi Germany, I mean, would use in the Second World War, and it's all being justified. And so, in a way, in my book, I have also, there is a big element of hope actually in my book, although it's written out of insecurity and fear, but there is an element of hope, because I think that hope comes from the way the world is also reacting to this absurdity of the situation, because the world is slowly and slowly becoming much more multipolar. And what is happening is that the hegemonic West, who have been the colonial powers and the neo colonists, they're slowly and slowly losing ground. And obviously, since they're losing ground, to have their say, and to preserve their so-called rules-based international order, and it's very interesting how they coin the term rules based. Who makes the rules? It's them who make the rules. They never say it's law based,
Mm.
because law based will be something completely different. Then you cannot justify a genocide. That is why there is a case going on today at the International Court of Justice. And so I think there is a reaction also against this. And it is only logical, it is only just and fair that co- continents which have been oppressed and colonized for their resources, for hundreds of years, the entire African continent, entire Latin America, most of Asia, will find their rightful place in the world, and they will determine what they will do their own will resources, with their minerals, with their oil, with their gas, with whatever. They will determine, and not someone else, not some corporations, not a group of corporations. Because what has happened is that no country in the world today, in a way, I mean, especially in the West, I will say, is a sovereign state. They're all run by a clutch of corporations, and all their political leaders are nothing but frontmen for these corporations. And but that cannot go on, because this is absurd and this is not sustainable.
True. Very true. So this brings us to the last question for this session. So amidst all these themes that your book is covering, if there is one message that you would want the reader to take back, what would it be? Would it be hope? Would it be fear? Would it be the anger?
I think hope, and hope with audacity, because to realize that hope, one will require a certain amount of audacity, a certain amount of recklessness, a
Very true.
certain amount of courage. And you know, courage comes from fear. I have realized this, because I've read extensively, I told you, on wars and war memoirs and stuff. So almost every major, I mean, combatant or soldier or general, or they all refer to this element of fear.
Yeah.
That anybody who says, I'm not afraid to die, is actually not speaking the truth. Although it's very, I mean, usually you say, na, I mean, uh, like like we are not ready to sacrifice ourselves for a nation, for a cause, or for something. But they say, when you're actually in the field of combat, when the bullet is flying, when the shells are landing, you are afraid, and you want to survive. You want to survive, and from that fear comes that element of survive, which they say translates into courage and bravery. Because he said it, I mean you can understand, I mean, like, for example, I during my journalistic years, I used to cover a lot of rural, I used to do a lot of rural reporting. So I went to these places where there are starvation deaths and stuff. That is also another kind of courage. I saw how what desperation can drive a man into. Because when you have not eaten for 9 days at a stretch, you will do anything. Anybody who says that, no, I mean, like, it's very easy for us, I mean, like, because we come from a certain social background, economic background. I mean, like, we don't really worry about what to, I mean, whether we'll go to bed on a hungry tummy or something. I mean, like, any father, I mean, it's very easy for people to say that he's a criminal. Oh, he indulged in crime, he did this. I met people who I know, I mean, like, who were locked up. I met them in prison at times and stuff, who were locked up because their children had nothing to eat for 9 or 11 consecutive days. And yes, they stole some food. So courage has very different definitions for very different kind of people. But I think the way this world is going will need a certain element of audacity and courage to bring this world to its natural order, and will also need sense and and a sense of willingness to coexist with other species, if not for anything else, but for very selfish reasons, that even we will cease to exist if we uh, go on kind of doing what we are doing. And this entire notion of development needs to be challenged, because it's development for whom? If it's development for less than 1% of the world population, it doesn't make sense. So that's all.
So that brings us to the end of this session. Tathagata, any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
No, no, not really. Thank you so much for having me around. I mean,
Thank
like,
you so much.
and,
It was wonderful interacting with you. I really enjoyed your book, and I loved listening to the story behind the characters. Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.